The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. This content is created in partnership with our sponsor, Net Wealth Investments Limited, ABN 85090 569 109, AFSL 230975, and is limited to publicly available information. Before acting on any general advice, you should consider whether appropriate and obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license and does not provide any financial advice or services or endorse any general advice. If a PDS or IM exists, you should obtain a copy and review it thoroughly before making a decision.
AdviceTech. As if it wasn't enough to be across TMDs, Alpha, Beta, Rule of 72, and all the other nuances of financial advice. Now, advisors are expected to be across all the technology options too, and there's so many of them. But never fear, Peita D is here. Join me each week on a journey of discovery through the software and apps on offer for advisors and advice businesses. So let's dive in, fellow advice explorers.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by NetWealth. Imagine a world of investment choice that goes beyond borders. Open up a world of investment opportunity with NetWealth, where you can access local and international securities, as well as bonds and foreign currency options for wholesale clients. Offer your clients flexibility, transparency, and efficiency, with managed accounts, managed funds, and access to non-custodial assets. A world of investment awaits you. Discover it at netwealth.com.au/woo.
Hello and welcome to the Ensemble AdviceTech podcast. I'm Peita Diamantidis, and the guest joining me here today to deep dive into Impacter was a finance journalist with the Australian Financial Review, Channel 9's Financial Review Sunday program, Kaplan professional, and the ABC, and is author of the Financy Women's Index. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Bianca Hartge-Hazelman. Woo! Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for that intro. It's lovely.
Not at all. Now, I am super keen to dive into all things Impacter. But first, our audience know we start with the easy breezy getting to know you and how you use technology. So Let's kick off with, what's your most used emoji? Do you even use emojis?
I do. I have a couple really. And I know you've asked for one. So my preference is the wink. I really like the wink.
Well, that's got some personality, right?
It has a bit of personality. It's kind of like saying, yeah, I get it. I'll be there. I'm running late. We'll be I like the wink.
Perfect. And we all are so attached to our smartphones. How did we ever organise anything in our lives without them? If you had to wipe all the apps off your smartphone, what would be the three that you'd keep?
Oh, this is a good one. I'd keep what I use and what makes my life easiest.
Mm-hmm.
I keep the Woolies app because I'm one of those people. I don't shop. I literally do my food groceries and get them delivered while I'm laying in bed. You have all that kind of organised, so I need that always ready to go when we're running out of stuff. Definitely keep the camera because I'm always snapping. I've got 3 little girls. We're always snapping pictures and using that, and I'm always looking at LinkedIn.
Nice. I love it. Look, and I love to hear of somebody else who avoids food and other shops at all cost. I'm the same. If you can get it delivered, that's how I do it.
Yeah, it's just everything is, when you're running a business, it's all of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Just that you have to do. I'm not financial to the point yet where I can hire somebody to do that.
Right. But it's on the list. I'm the same.
And it's on the list. It's on the list.
Awesome. So thank you for that. Let's dive into Impacter, shall we? So to give the listener a sense, let's sort of go really high level and talk about where it sits in the tech space. This is broader than AdviceTech, clearly. But talk about, sort of what category does the tool fit in? And then let's also talk about sort of, how it came about, why you developed the app.
Yeah. Well, Impacter is, what category is it? It sits in the diversity, equity and inclusion category. So the DEI software space.
Yeah.
And that has traditionally been a place of HR software. But what we're seeing with HR software is more DEI being a bolt-on to your existing platform, or there might be a further integration. Impacter is a centralized self-assessment platform that allows you to measure and track your DEI performance in real time and then get actions for your performance, whether you're underperforming or overperforming. We'll provide solutions to how to do better. But critical to what we're doing is being able to validate through our accountability layers how well a company is actually doing by asking the employees, are they feeling it? Is this company delivering on things like the gender pay gap or leadership diversity across many broad forms? Are they delivering on flexible work or, parental leave, all these different strategies, different things that might be in place? And finally, the other thing Impacter does is really look at the business case for change. So we are an MVP, but we've started our product by looking at the financials of a company and then correlating that with how that organization might perform relative to their DEI initiatives and in time to their gender pay gap, to their leadership structure, different things like that, to try to break down this thinking that there is not much of a correlation between DEI performance when there really is, and we're seeing the research that is showing it. The more companies are tracking it, the more we're able to say, aha, it's there, it exists. So we've built that into the software as well.
And look, I think it's such an interesting conversation because I'm with you for, decades. There's been all this conversation about business case to justify things like this. And what's interesting to me about that now is companies are spending a fortune on employee wellness, right? On all sorts of programs that are about both engaging their employees, but ensuring they're, the best versions of themselves. Surely the environment they're working within is a significant part of that. And therefore, and to me, that's part of what DEI represents is the environment, the vibe, the interaction, the way, the leadership, how all of that works is a contributor and an ongoing contributor to an employee's individual well-being. So to me,
Definitely.
It's natural that we would want to be on top of this if we want to retain great people.
Absolutely. It is about employee retention and it's about attracting the right people as well to your workforce. And we are in a place, space and time now where if an organization's not performing, it will soon be known. And there are many websites that do, even social media that do allow for this kind of naming and shaming, or it gets around if you're not really living up to what you say you are doing. And if you're merely pink washing or DEI washing or, and that's a greenwashing.
Yes.
These things are increasingly on the radar of employees. So it is in a business's best interest to invest in DEI. Now, not all DEI initiatives are relevant to that particular organisation. So it's a matter of looking at what might be. But that's the beauty, I suppose, of our self-assessment tool. It's kind of, it takes the guesswork out of a lot of, where do I start? What do I do? Yeah. Oh, God, there's too much to think about here with DEI. What next, So we've worked closely with the University of South Australia's Centre of Workplace Excellence to develop an evidence-based approach. And it is comprehensive, it is robust. There's no getting away from that. But if you commit to this and you can see the outcomes through positive performance or effectiveness DEI, then without a doubt you should see, as you have just said, those correlations with employee retention, being able to say, hey, we stand for this and attract staff to your organisation. And I think it's one of those chicken before egg things. Many organisations say, we want to attract diverse candidates, but how do we attract them? Well, you've got to be on the pathway to show that you are actually wanting to make change at the same time.
Yeah. And look, I can see this it's Impacter, right? So of course it's going to have impact, but I can see it having impact in a much broader sense. In financial advice, one of the biggest waves that's approaching us is the huge intergenerational wealth transfer that's going to occur. And that is going to end up per annum being bigger than super contributions per annum, right? This is going to be a massive financial shift of money. And the reason I bring that up is, 1 in 4 Aussies are born overseas and 1 in 2 have an overseas born parents. So even just from that sort of diversity and inclusion perspective, having an approach that understands different whatever different is and understands the variety of people that contribute both in your business but also your client base. Like all of this to me will make us better advisors, right? This is all about having the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Now, of course, gender is a huge part of that. That's, just over 50% of consumers, but there's so many other layers of this we need to, understand and start making habits. Like these business habits that just mean that our businesses better reflect the public.
It's a really good point. And I was reading something that Simon Sinek said the other day about customers. Customers will never love a company until the employees love it first. And that is a quote that really resonates with me. And I think about that with financial advice because I've been a journalist for some time following financial advice and financial services industry. And it really is important to truly understand the client, to truly understand what your customers want. You have to see it also in your own workforce to understand the different ideas. And diversity isn't just about the physical. It's about the ideas. It's about the approach to work, the thinking, the cultural background, the influences, all these different things. It's not a matter of just having, various people of different skins, nationalities in your workplace. It's a whole wonderful recipe of ideas that can hopefully allow you to understand and attract clients to your business.
Yeah, and look, where we're going there is true diversity of thought or ideas. That's where that's where the magic happens. When we see a solution out there and we're just like, wow, that was amazing. Often that's because they've truly gone wide in terms of the way they look at or think about something. That's only possible when not everybody is like us, me, whoever you are, like whatever your business looks like. You only get that sort of really innovative and interesting and dynamic environments when there is diversity. And that's and of course that comes from different lived experiences, and different lived experiences come from different ethnic backgrounds, gender, age, physical ability, all sorts of things contribute to those different lived experiences. So, I'm right there with you. I think it can be so easy to say, but I don't think there's an issue. Everybody gets the same opportunity, don't they? It's like, well, that's only coming from your own lived experience. What's required here is to be able to step outside your own shoes and into somebody else's.
Absolutely. And I think this is where reverse mentoring can be quite powerful, is understanding where it's available, where you can do that, is understanding and stepping into the shoes of somebody else. And I'm throwing that out there, which I'm sure is coming at a time of increased cost pressure. And there is this consideration at the moment, can I afford to spend on DEI? Can I afford to invest in all these different things? And it's really critical to the long-term viability of businesses today to be doing something about this, because it's being in this game of business is something that can be purposeful and long-lasting rather than so short-term focused and just getting in, getting out kind of thing. It really can have a greater impact, and that is the wonderful power of business, and I suppose advice as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the user experience for Impacter. So, it's clear that there's a leadership, engagement with the tool, but over what layers of, say, and let's talk a small to medium business initially, but clearly it's designed also for bigger business. But sort of what layers of the business can interact with the tool, and what experience do they have as they do that?
Sure. So any organisation with 5 or more employees can use Impacter. We've deliberately done that because DEI shouldn't be something that you reach a certain size and say, suddenly I care. It really is something that we shouldn't price smaller companies out of purpose.
No.
And so that's why we've done that and staged a few different things differently there. But it's about having the business owner involved, or the CEO, and then if you have it, an HR team would predominantly, those 3 types would do the initial steps. You might also involve your finance department for those financials, different things like that. But certainly small, medium and large, I think where we sit, and we are early days, we've only just launched this product. I see us being of most appeal, and certainly the companies on the platform tend to be medium to large.
Yep.
I do hope, though, that our product will appeal to small. And so we've got some other bits of functionality that will come out as we grow, because that it's important. It's important for the bigger impact as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so then, the, leadership team will be doing that. And I'm imagining that's part of that self-assessment process and sort of really taking those first steps. You then talked about getting feedback from the staff. How does that work? How often does that normally happen? Like, what are you expecting that's going to happen as businesses use the tool?
Sure. Well, the beauty of the tool is we take quarterly data snapshots, whether you're using it every quarter or not. And the purpose of that is for historical tracking. So we want to see, ideally, that an organisation is improving over time, and to give you the data back to have a look at where or not improvements were made. So that really resonates. Now, how often a company comes in and does the updates is completely up to them. They might introduce a new strategy. They might, cull half their workforce.
Yeah,
there are things that will need to be updated if those kind of situations arise. So with quarterly data snapshots, we'd say surveying your employees no more than once a quarter. Some organisations will do just once a year. And it's really about having that bounce back on the latest picture of the workplace and the strategies in place. So we ask a lot about those equitable strategies around superannuation, flexible work, paid parental leave, leadership development, pay equity, different things like that. So there might be changes that might warrant an organisational leader to say, right, it's time for us to survey again. Or indeed the organisation might say, let's survey, like I know some companies do, twice a year to really get a sense. Or that organisation might have not performed very well at the very outset and is on a mission to correct that result. So it's really up to the company and to the goals they want to set themselves and how quickly they want to get there. But the DEI process is a long-term commitment. It's not something you suddenly get your score and you're there and you've ticked all the boxes, because anything can change. And it's about culturally setting the organisation to ensure that you have that constant check-in with your workplace to make sure that they still feel that they belong.
Right. And it's that, it's interesting. It's the type of health check that advisors do repeatedly with clients, but it's almost like a workforce mental health check. This is going, hey, how do you feel? And how do you feel about the space we've put in place for you?
That's
so I think,
is it
what a wonderful rigor to bring in.
That's right. Absolutely. How effective is it? Could it be better? What's not great about it? Tell us more. And we've tried very hard to ensure that the way we ask the questions are not leading, because there are a lot of surveys that are biased in the way they approach the questionnaires. We've tried very hard to ensure that that's not the case with the way the academics have framed things. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's interesting with this sort of tool. I can imagine some people or some businesses sort of going, the minute we measure something, then it's real.
We're out there. It's real.
Right. This is, but that's the point. This is not something that gets better when it's underserved. Like when it's being ignored, it doesn't get better, it gets worse.
It's like OH&S. We could continue to ignore that up until such a point that the person on the work site keeps falling in the same hole. Like,
yes,
we do need to think about DEI as a constant, as something that does need framework around it to continuously support the employee. And I get that there is this resistance, because in many ways for a lot of organisations, they're still getting their head around DEI. Still, there's data out of the US is showing that DEI recruitment for that diversity inclusion manager is among the fastest growing job types. So we know that organisations are hungry to make change where they can, but there still is a bit of resistance around, once we put ourselves out there, we're out there. But the reality is we live in a day where if you don't do something, the risk is somebody else is going to say something about it if you're not. Because we cannot be blind to the fact that employees aren't aware that all this is happening.
Absolutely. And look, it's financial services is way down the list in terms of all of the measures you might put in that. As a general industry, it's particularly bad on these fronts. And so, saying, oh, gee, now's not the time, I think, is like, well, it was the time years and years ago. We're behind. It's not like we're along the side other industries. We're way behind. And so if we truly believe we want to connect with the public and help them, this is part of that. This is part of that mission.
And there is an opportunity for an organisation to be the leader of diversity, equity and inclusion. And I'd love to see that realised with financial services, certainly. I mean, there is a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
But progress,
absolutely,
if done right, is worth celebrating.
Yeah, it is. And particularly, I mean, as advisors, we're really conscious of greenwashing and other things that have gone on with investment funds, right? And so that's a real thing we see all the time. This is an issue within financial services companies, is a similar issue. There's a lot of talk about it. They've even maybe got awards or things that, like, there's all this stuff that looks great on a PR release, on a press release. But the actual measure internally of how this is going and how it's changed over time is the best demonstration of impact and making a real difference. So I think, if a corporate doesn't have a tool like this, you've got to question, well, what are they doing?
And that's what's great about Impactor, is you can use this information and your progress to tell that story to your customers in PR, in marketing activities, both internal and external. We do have a couple of financial advisory businesses on the platform, and I know they're very active about how they're progressing and wanting to use Impactor as a way to say, we've validated it, we've checked it, this is how we're going.
Absolutely, because progress is the truth, right? I mean, I think if any corporate or any even small advice business came out and said, no, we've got it covered, it's all good, well, the public's going to instantly suspect that, because it's not possible. We can't all be perfect at something like this because it's so relatively new. So demonstrating progress, that's what shows that you're on it, is that you're making efforts.
Yeah, that's right. And I think in this environment, there is a real risk of, you mentioned greenwashing before, the regulator has put businesses on notice for that. And investors are kind of looking out for it. So we do have to be aware of what's happening in the landscape of compliance.
Absolutely. And so in terms of then, what you're seeing down the track, you mentioned a few things that you guys are going to be adding. Is there, what are the next sort of milestones for the app? What are you working towards or going to expand and develop it?
Sure.
What's the next phase? What
we're looking at and what we're developing are more customization tools around tracking individual DEI initiatives that are outside of the self-assessment. And then goal tracking assignments to that. There's also an integration allowing for our uploads to go through to WGEA and vice versa, to reduce survey fatigue on gender equity questions, because that's a big thing. You want to be able to measure and track ongoing performance around gender equity. You don't want to lose it or be in a mad scramble when it comes time to report to WGEA, which tends to happen. So this is a way to make that easier in an ongoing environment. So, I mean, they're just a couple of the things that I've said quite easily, but the actual development is really something that's entertaining, to say the least, at this point in time. I mean, my background is as a finance journalist. So, and when I produce the Women's Index, it's all around writing about the data and the findings. So the purpose in creating Impactor was to help organisations take action towards the big picture equality and reduce those timeframes. And so I've had to team up with tech experts from financial services, from different fintech and our various technology companies to bring Impactor to life. And it has been from a designer point of view, a real eye-opener for me. And there's so much more that's excited me when I look at the tech world around AI and how we can use that with Impactor and all these different things that are very exciting at this point in time. I think I saw an article around Microsoft this morning saying that AI contributed a significant portion to a record profit for the company. And that's just the appetite for this type of tech at this point in time, and where we're going into the future with not just technology, but our own services jobs.
Absolutely. It is both exciting and sort of, it's actually a bit, you've got to pause sometimes and just think, how is this possible? I'm living in the movies that came out a decade ago. This is just nuts, but it is fast, exciting. And I think very fast. And I think it's what I love is, tech was always going to be used for things like analysis and tools like that. Like financial advice, it's all forecasting. What I love is some of this tech now doing things like what you're doing here. Like this is, human impact stuff. That's exciting. When we can start to use the tech for those sort of things, then it's amplifying the impact we can all have as individuals. That's really exciting. Okay, so it's early days. How long has it been released?
It's been a month. It's been
super exciting.
Yeah, it feels like an age, but it's been a month because you've been development doesn't stop, does it? You just launch, and then you just keep going. You just keep developing, and you're selling, and you're talking about it, and suddenly all advocacy work really is selling and advocacy work, and it's a challenge when you're a startup as well, because not many people ever want to be first, but often those that are rewarded for being first. So it is an education around it as well. But I love this kind of work. I absolutely thrive in this environment and talking about these products and learning all the time. It's like doing an MBA on steroids or something like that. You're constantly learning, and it's a thrill for me.
It's fabulous. And I think, we all have tried new things and discovered the wonder. And I'm imagining the tool is only going to grow and amplify by the more people using it. You guys need people to start interacting with it, different types of businesses, different approaches, different strategies.
Absolutely. It's critical for the benchmarking across the platform. It's critical for the insights that even me as a journalist is able to write, but also our partnership with the University of South Australia, now Adelaide, which with that merger going ahead, is huge, because we're able to inform the academic community as well at an aggregated level about what it takes to be a top performer in this country. And that is really groundbreaking stuff for the future of DEI.
Absolutely, because it just simply can't be one of those sort of motherhood, bumper sticker statements made anymore. We are so far beyond that. This is all about action now. And so, being able to give them data that truly demonstrates the impact that action can have or not have, if we don't take any, I think that's how you'll actually get movement on things. Because in any business, there's priorities, and we've just got to try and nudge this up the priority list.
That's right.
People be paying more attention in a general sense to these sort of topics, so that it just becomes part of the DNA. It should just be another part of things that automatically happen within businesses.
I do want to put that out to listeners, though. Like, we are early in our development, and it's a very exciting time, but we need feedback too. So I'm open to feedback as part of this learning process, because ultimately you want to produce a product that's of benefit to your customers. If it's not a benefit to their customers, well, they're not going to use it, and then you're not going to have the desired impact that you're after. So if I could say anything with this interview, it's that I'm very open to feedback. We've got a lot in the pipeline, but there might be suggestions or different ideas that are really, really, really important in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And the user experience and how it actually comes out in the wash, right? How it works when you're using it as part of the business is going to be key to the impact you guys can have. Is there anything else we've missed? Have we covered off the highlights?
I think that's pretty good on Impacter. I feel like I said before, I've come from being a journalist, so that the move towards selling is a new one for me.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you now not from a sales perspective, but I'm acutely aware that we've just launched a product. So therefore, you never stop selling when you're in business, do you? You can't. You just don't.
You don't. It's a natural. It's the part of the beast you just can't avoid. It's how it works. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think anytime you've got passion and real belief in the thing that you're providing to the public or to business in this case, then the selling is much easier.
Yes,
I've got to say.
It is. It becomes just verbal diarrhea. You just can't stop talking about it. But I love what I do. I love the impact that we've been able to make through the Women's Index. That's a report that gets over 1 million eyeballs per quarter now on gender equality alone, and we don't do any paid media on that. That's just through circulation and the media picking it up and the interest in. Well, where do we stand on gender equality timeframes? We're at 24 years on the gender pay gap. So all these different things that we've been able to track over the past 6 years have really spurred a fire in my belly, but just it keeps me going and have attracted a lot of really amazing people along for the ride as well. I'm grateful that I'm surrounded by a group of economists on the index who review that report every quarter that are just amazing. And there's been many before them too that have all contributed to where we're going with that report and the impact it has. And then likewise with Impactor,
which is huge.
It's fantastic, and I think that's the power of when you make change in a business, be it on DEI or maybe it's ESG, it's really about bringing along a team with you that believe in that vision. So you're in this infinite game, not just this goal-orientated business that has no real impact. And I think that's probably the big thing with DEI or gender equity, whatever part you want to focus on. It's really about getting your employees living and breathing the change that you want to see and creating those cultures that truly benefit the business and make you feel like you want to be there and show up for your clients.
And that your team believe that you believe in it.
Yes.
Because you're doing something about it.
Absolutely. The vision has got to be there. We've all got to have this vision of some sort that inspires. It just keeps you turning up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Advice Explorers, if you'd like to find out more about Impactor, which I'm confident you will, or the Financy Women's Index, any of that information, will include the website link in the episode show notes, along with Bianca's LinkedIn details. I'm sure she can point you in the right direction of somebody that can then help you out if you're looking to get a demo or are interested in the tool. Look, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing what is a bit of a different tech tool for the podcast. I was really excited to have you come on and share it with us and for it finally to be live. I've been watching, quietly stalking.
Peita, thank you so much. It's a delight to be talking with you again in this forum as well.
Absolutely. And best of luck. And, I'm excited we've now got a tool where business can actually make some change, on diversity, equity and inclusion. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Lovely talk.
So what a different one. I can't ask you, listener, whether you're a user of Impactor because it's almost certainly not the case. This thing is only a month old. But I am curious about your take on a tool like this. And, I'd love to hear from you on the Ensemble community platform on what your take is, whether you think that could apply to the practice you're in or the business you're in. It'd be interesting to hear, the progress of any DEI strategies maybe you're seeing within the practice you're in, or if you do own your own, what your plans are in that space. In terms of my thoughts, what I thought would be worth doing is sort of giving us a baseline for this stuff that's maybe new to some people. Look, if you are maybe within product, platform land or insurer land or large corporate land, then invariably, diversity, equity, inclusion will have come up at something. You might have been to some training or aware of a department that looks after it within HR. Like there'll be something you've come across your radar. If, like me, you're in a small practice, then it may, while you'll be aware of it out there will be things you might see on LinkedIn about diversity. You might come across it at a conference. It's not necessarily something that we'd have a whole department, wear it often, the practice. So what I wanted to just cover off is, some baseline language that's used in that sort of environment, because I think it can help us better understand the challenges we're facing and what we might be trying to embark on when we're talking about this space. Because I think it's easy when you're not immersed in it to dismiss a lot of the language is overthinking, or really is it such a big deal? I don't really see, everybody has the same opportunities, don't they? It's all the same, right? And I think, when we think about it, people often feel that way, say about the investing space. Like, you talk about all this detail. Really? Do I care? I don't want to know. I just want to know that I've got enough money. Right? We hear that from clients, right? And the truth is, you need to know more to be able to understand how to better play in that space, how to better utilize it and engage with it. So just like we encourage our clients to better understand when it comes to investing, I think we individually need to better understand, diversity, equity, inclusion, so we can see, how things can evolve and the impact it could have on our businesses, but also, our skills and as advisors. So in terms of the language, what I mean is it's just talking through the definition of different things. So let's talk about, reality. Reality is, generally, one person or individual gets more than they need. They might have a lot of opportunity and they might have a lot of things at their disposal, and somebody else gets less than they need. And this is where disparity occurs, right? Whether that's on pay or opportunity or funding, VC funding, all sorts of things, there's this difference, right? And somebody gets far more than they need. Somebody else can't get any, that's where the frustration sits. And often when we're not exposed to these things, we think, what we're looking for is equality, right? And the reason I want to go through this language is it's not quite that, actually. It's more, far, far, far more than that, and has more layers than that. So I want you to imagine that there's, a field. It's a children's playground. It's wonderful. It's got bubbles blowing. It's got balloons. It's got fun games, and these kids are in there squealing. They're loving it. They're playing. And around this wonderful, fun-filled field is a fence. And on the outside of the fence are some kids sort of trying to peer over. They can hear the fun being had. They're trying to peer over the fence. One kid looking over the fence is tall enough they can see over the fence. The next one can't quite, like his eyes peering just over the fence, and the next one can't even tell what's going on because it's not tall enough to see over the fence. It can just hear all the fun and the joy happening. Now, the thing about, and if you have that picture of those three kids, right, peering into all these things happening that they can't quite reach, then equality, the assumption behind equality is that everyone benefits from the same support. So in the little scenario I described, they'd all get a box so that they could stand on the box to be able to see over the fence, right? Now, the first kid didn't need it because he could already see over the fence, so he just gets a bit taller. The middle kid, yay, I can now see over the fence. This is great. I can see what's happening. The third kid, the box isn't big enough for them to see over the fence, right? So an equal box for everybody, equal treatment for everybody actually is, that's equality. Whereas equity, everybody gets the support they need, right? So the kid that's tall enough, he doesn't need a box. He's good, so he can see over the fence. The kid in the middle just needs the one box. It's all good, man. I'll just take the one box. Whereas the really tiny kid, he gets two boxes. He can finally see over the fence, right? So equity is when they get the support they need, not equality where they all get the same support. Now, and I'm sharing this only because this was insight I didn't have. And so when I was starting to do some digging into this as a topic, stepping through this, and I actually got a cartoon that a psychologist actually shared, and I'll share this on LinkedIn when we go live with the episode. This really helped me understand what we're talking about here. Now, there's another layer, right? We can go further. Justice is when all three of the kids can see the game because the actual cause of the inequity has been addressed. It disappears, meaning the fence is gone. They can all see anyway, right? So the barrier, the systemic barrier has been removed, right? So that's justice, right? So that's when, now, that's a really hard thing to achieve because often those systemic barriers, when we're talking about, diversity, equity, inclusion, those things are things that have developed over time that often we've never been aware of that they exist, these barriers. So this is a very difficult thing to achieve, and this is an evolution, right, of our approach. But that's what justice is. Now, inclusion is even further because inclusion says, well, the kids shouldn't be standing on the edge looking in. They get to be included in the fun that's being had. They get to play with the bubbles and they get to run around on all the great rides and squealing with happiness. No one is left on the outside. You don't only remove the barriers keeping people out. We actually make sure they're all valued and they're all involved, right? So that is sort of the layers of the things we're talking about here. And this applies, like I mentioned before, whether it's gender, ethnic background, age, physical ability, Indigenous background, all these sort of things are a lens to each of those sort of expressions I use there, whether the current reality, focusing on equality, moving beyond that to equity, actually achieving justice for this issue, and then ultimately having full inclusion, right? So the reason I step through that is, if that's sort of flagged for you, well, hold on, my understanding isn't deep enough on this. I've been making some assumptions about what everybody means when they're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Then feel free to check out the LinkedIn post I've done to share the graphic. That alone got me a long way, and then start doing some digging. Now, as advisors, I think there's more to be asked of us. I mean, there's absolute need for things like Impacter in businesses we operate in. So I'd encourage you all to nudge your owner or your team leader or anybody like that and say, hey, do we have a tool like this? I'd love to hear about what we're doing on this front. Absolutely. I'd encourage you to start asking and engaging on the topic. But we're advisors. We recommend investments. And for many of you listening, you have a passion and your clients have a passion about ESG. Now, we've all heard of things like greenwashing and all those things when a fund misrepresents actually the process they go to, right? That's one thing. But I would suggest that if a fund manager is talking about, applying a lens to the underlying funds or stocks, equities that they invest our clients' money into, they also need to be talking internally about their own approaches to sustainability and governance, to diversity, equity, inclusion, that in their own business, not just in where they put our clients' money, but in their own business. What are they doing on this front? And what can they share with us that we can share with clients? Because I think we're going to evolve over time to the point where it's not going to be enough to know the underlying investment has that lens. The public are going to want to know that the person choosing those investments has that lens within the business they're working in, within that fund manager. So, I'd encourage us to all start asking about that. Hey, what is your approach to DEI? Do you have a tool like Impacter that's showing, a progression over time? We acknowledge financial services is way behind lots of other industries here, but hey, how are you going? What's the progress? So I guess, I think us just asking the questions and asking to, repeatedly, lots of us asking it, we'll start to see more and more of them actually prioritize this on the list of many things that they're trying to develop within their business. So I'm hoping that, this maybe flagged some interest for you, got you more curious. Maybe you're going to do some more reading or digging. I'd encourage you to follow Bianca and her work at Financy. There's a lot of interesting reading there too. But this is so much bigger than just, about our teams. This is about the public we serve, and making sure that we can put ourselves in their shoes, that we can create, get a lens of their lived experience that's much deeper than it otherwise would have been, because we are opening our eyes to it for our own staff, and therefore, our ability to serve the public, I think, will be much better. And the percent of advised Australians, I think, will increase as we can all better reflect them and better empathise with where they are coming from. So now, in the last few minutes we've got, we all know that I have a passion about curiosity. I believe the one skill we need to have to be truly bionic advisors is avid curiosity. So to help you build that habit, this week's Today's Curiosity Corner website is a little bit of a gift. I'm getting asked a lot about AI tools, and there's only a bajillion of them. Yes, technical expression there. I've got an actuarial background. I can say a bajillion is a real thing. There's loads of them, and they're just coming up all the time. And so people are like, oh, is there an AI tool for this? Oh, is there an AI tool for that? And the answer is, I don't know. There might be, probably. And so I came across this website that I think could be really useful called futurepedia.io. That's future PEDIA.io. And very simply, this is an AI tools directory, and they update it daily. And if you just head on it, you can focus on tools that got added today, but you can also search for a particular category. Oh, I'm looking for something that does audio editing. I'm looking for something that builds avatars. I'm looking for something that's, a customer support AI tool or a copywriting tool or an education assistant or, an email assistant, or it does fashion or it does fitness, or like basically they've collected them all in one place. And then they've also collated sort of feedback on them. So they're scored and you can see all the different tools that are available or accessible to do all sorts of different things. So no longer will you have to wonder, is there an AI tool for that task? Or is there, that thing that I find frustrating, is there something I could use that could help me along the way? Simply use Futurepedia, and I reckon that'll get you a long way in the right direction. Well, that's all we've got for this week, folks. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you'll get your AdviceTech fix magically sent to you each Friday. And if you are stuck in a bit of a rut on process and tech projects going forward, or maybe even you're part of a group, maybe a dealer group where it's like, everybody's like, far out tech, this is a bit overwhelming. Should we get new tech? Should we just focus on the ones we've got? Then I am doing a whole lot of keynotes and workshops in the future about how we can become better, more tech savvy. We can make tech a key part of our infrastructure in our practices, and potentially how we can even streamline it and use less of it in the future and just use it well. So if you would like me to come and talk at an event in the future, or run a workshop for your practice, then please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to have a chat, and you can find me on LinkedIn at PeitaMD. That's PEITAMD. Otherwise, I'll look forward to turning up in your earbuds next week. And remember, Advice Explorers, stay curious.